I know I haven't put up any YouTube content in a while, but here's a good one, as Trey Gowdy rips into Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson. Listen for yourself.
I'm Mr. Gowdy, the chairman of the Immigration and Border Security Subcommittee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank the gentleman from Texas for letting me go in his spot. Mr. Secretary, I've been on this committee for almost 5 years now, and I have listened as witnesses primarily called by our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have repeated with almost catatonic frequency certain phrases like citizenship for 11 million aspiring Americans, as if 11 million of any category could all pass a background check. Phrases like functional control of the border. Phrases as benign sounding as sanctuary cities. And I've listened pretty carefully, Mr. Secretary, as I've heard argument after argument after argument made against empowering state and local law enforcement to actually enforce immigration laws. Have you had a chance to look at the criminal history of Mr. Lopez Sanchez?
I believe I have, yes.
It dates back to 1991. The criminal conduct occurred in 5 separate states. He's committed local, state, and federal crimes. He was and is, by any definition, a career criminal. He violated at least 3 separate statutes when he simply picked up the gun before he shot and killed an innocent woman walking with her father. So, to me, Mr. Secretary, he is Exhibit A that we must not have functional control over the border, or he wouldn't have re-entered so many times. And he is, I'm assuming, not able to pass anyone's background check. I would hope that somebody with this criminal history couldn't even pass our friend in the Senate's comprehensive immigration reform background check. Now, I want us to look at a legal issue in a second, Mr. Secretary, but I want to read a quote to you, and I want to ask you if you know who said it. I want people who are living in this country undocumented to come forward, to get on the books and subject themselves to a background check so I can know who they are, and whether it's the current DACA program or a path to citizenship, whether it's deferred action or earned path to citizenship, from a Homeland Security perspective, I want people to come forward. Do you know who said that?
Well, I don't know if I said it or not, but that is consistent with my own sentiments, so I could have said that.
You did say that. Now, I want you to tell me what in Defendant Lopez Sanchez's background leads you to believe that he would, to use your words, come forward.
Well, clearly, he is not the type of person that would ever qualify for any sort of deferred action.
I know that, nor is he the type of person that would come forward, Mr. Secretary. So my point is, when you have a porous...
Sir?
Sir?
May I be allowed to speak?
You are welcome to answer the question that was asked, yes.
Well, give me a chance, please. He is not any kind of person who would qualify for any type of version of deferred action in my book or earned path to citizenship. He is a criminal, a dangerous criminal, multiple times over. When we talk about encouraging people to come forward, what we're talking about are people who we hope will report crime, who will participate in American society fully. Obviously, somebody like this is not coming forward.
No, he is not coming forward, Mr. Secretary. I'll let you answer the question, Mr. Secretary, but I'm not going to let you run out the clock. You're right, he's not coming forward, and he doesn't need to get on the books because he's already been on the books. In fact, better than being on the books, Mr. Secretary, he was in federal prison. So I want to know, why was somebody in federal prison with a federal detainer on him released to a sanctuary city?
You'd have to ask the Bureau of Prisons.
Have you asked the Bureau of Prisons?
We've had a detainer on him, both when he was in BOP custody and when he was in the custody of San Francisco.
I know you did. My question to you is...
I'm quite sure that there are a lot of questions being asked right now. In my book, he is Exhibit A for why jurisdictions need to work with our priority enforcement program. Secure Communities was not working. There were over 12,000 detainers of mine that were not acted upon.
Well, then why don't you make them mandatory, Mr. Secretary?
Not working.
Why don't you make the detainers mandatory? If cities like San Francisco are not complying with federal detainers, why don't you make them mandatory?
I think that would be a huge setback in our ability to work with state and local law enforcement, and I suspect they would agree as well.
Well, I do not agree, and I'll tell you why I don't agree, Mr. Secretary. What I find ironic is you are not willing to mandate federal detainers. But you are willing to mandate that state and local law enforcement cannot assist you in enforcing immigration laws. I mean, help me understand that. You can empower a city like San Francisco to ignore federal law, but you won't empower state and local law enforcement to actually enforce immigration laws. Help me reconcile that.
Can I speak?
Yes, sir. You can have the rest of the time.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me 7 seconds.
Now, you take all the time you want to answer the question, because I think it's important.
I'm sure you're aware of this. The Secure Communities program was hugely problematic in the courts. The courts were saying that state and local law enforcement does not have the authority under the Due Process Clause of the Constitution to hold people until we could come and get them. Last time I looked through federal legislation, you cannot rewrite the Due Process Clause of the Constitution. So that is a problem. I do not believe that mandating through federal legislation the conduct of sheriffs and police chiefs is the way to go. I think it will be hugely controversial. I think it will have problems with the Constitution. I want to see us work cooperatively with state and local law enforcement, and I believe that they are poised to do that.
Well, my time is up, Mr. Secretary. The last time I looked, we had a supremacy clause. And federal law trumps state law, so God knows it trumps the law in San Francisco. And when I hear the phrase sanctuary city, as benign sounding as it is, it may have been a sanctuary for that defendant, but it sure as hell was not a sanctuary for a young woman walking with her father. So at a minimum, change the name of whatever benign sounding program cities like San Francisco want to follow, and the money ought to be cut, and I would hope that you would insist that federal detainers be honored and not be discretionary. And with that,